Welcome back, everyone. Um, we just had a short break there, and thank you for being here for our last session of the day. I know it's for some it's been a pretty long day, and I don't know, here in London it was raining and maybe not the best of weather, but it's the nature of being at a virtual conference is you don't always have to go outside to get here. So um, I'm super excited to be inviting our last two presenters of the day to our virtual conference. I want to start by introducing Lindsay. Lindsay Taylor, with a BA and CERPIT, holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Brock University in Labor Studies with a minor in psychology, along with two diplomas from Niagara College in Business General and Environmental Technician Studies, and a graduate certificate in ecosystem restoration. Lindsay has been recognized with two major awards, including the Niagara College President's Award for Innovation in Student Learning and Success, and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority with an Award of Merit. She is currently a certified ecological restoration practitioner in training and member of the Disciplinary Review Committee, pardon me, through Association of Engineering Technicians and Technologists, where she currently serves as an executive member of the OACTT Niagara chapter. Lindsay volunteers her time as a leader in the Niagara Urban Stewards, is an active member of Arbor STC, and is a volunteer corps member at Land Care Niagara. So welcome, Lindsay. We're super excited to have you. I'd also like to welcome Sean Parkinson, BSc, OIT, and ISA certified arborist. Sean started his tree journey at McMaster University, removing invasives and censusing a nearby Carolinian forest. After receiving a bachelor's degree in biology and environmental sciences, Sean completed a postgraduate education in environmental management and assessment at Niagara College and urban forestry at the St. Catharines, and urban forestry at Fleming College. I apologize, I'm stumbling over my words. In 2022, Sean began work on a comprehensive urban street tree report with the St. Catharines Downtown Association alongside Lindsay, and has since completed projects with the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, the Royal Botanical Gardens, Arbor STC, and the Niagara Urban Steward. Sean is committed to reforestation and afforestation efforts that can help green urban spaces and provide services to both communities and the environment. So I'm so excited to welcome you both. We look forward to your presentation today. I'll pass it over to you.
Right on. I'm just going to do the can you see my screen check. Yes? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sorry, I can see your screen.
Fabulous. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction as well.
Yep. Thank you as well. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our presentation on urban forestry management. We will be focusing on how applied science and data collection can drive decision-making for urban forestry. So how do we strategically apply science and data to urban forestry so that we can drive community climate action initiatives? I'm really excited that we'll be touching on a lot of the points discussed in Dr. Sivaraja's presentation. Hopefully we can add more conversation to the idea of turning research into community action. Before we begin, Lindsay and I would like to recognize that our project took place on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. As settlers of this land, we play our role in upholding the values and commitments within the agreement and local treaties. Environmental work such as forestry is deeply connected with traditional ecological knowledge, or TEK, and is based in strong relationships with the land. So we aim to center that commitment at the forefront of all of our work as best as possible.
So hi, everyone. As I was introduced, I'm a certified ecological practitioner in training and aspiring technologist. Through my portfolio downtown, I have urban forestry as a core component of my work. However, I really enjoyed hearing about Dr. Shivaraja's living lab research, as that's something we're also trying to emulate in our downtown projects. And over to you, Sean.
Oh, yeah. And I'm Sean. I'm a certified arborist. I'm very interested in community awareness and engagement, as well as advancements in municipal commitments to fostering urban forest growth. So throughout our presentation today, Lindsay and I will provide you with an introduction to our study site, where we conducted our data collection and assessments, and we will review some of the cultural and ecological history of the area. Following this discussion, we will share our research methodology and findings through our case study on the state and future of urban street trees in downtown St. Catharines. From this study, we prepared a series of recommendations for the City of St. Catharines that can be applied to many municipal contexts within Ontario and beyond. Then we will discuss the many opportunities for community action that have resulted from our research. And following that, we will have some time to go over any lingering questions. So we'll start with the natural cultural history of downtown St. Catharines. Over to you.
So before diving into the past, I'd like to begin by telling you all today a bit more about the St. Catharines Downtown Association, which represents the only business improvement area in St. Catharines. We would not have the platform we have today without their investment and belief in our work. So we're very grateful to the team downtown. So representing over 700 members, the mandate of the St. Catharines Downtown Association includes participating in programs aimed at the physical improvement and beautification of the core. We acknowledge that we have a shared responsibility to restore the urban ecosystem and revitalize our urban centers in a way that is accessible and safe for everyone. Downtown plays a critical role in advocating for sustainable urban cities through transparent, evidence-based decision-making, which is where our work comes into play. So many of you today may not be familiar with what a business improvement area is. They started in the 1970s, actually, as a response to the rise of shopping malls in North America. Downtown St. Catharines is one of the first and now of 270 BIAs across Ontario. BIAs allow local business people and commercial property owners and their tenants to join together and, with the support of the municipality, organize, finance, and carry out physical improvements and promote economic growth in their district. They are a set geographic area, which we've displayed in the map above, and are also regulated underneath the Municipal Act. So in January of this year, the St. Catharines Downtown Association Board of Directors voted to implement a mission and vision statement that highlights the importance of long-term greening within streetscape enhancement and revitalization. The placemaking initiatives that I lead downtown focus on how our projects today can lead to greater green wins in the future. But when Sean and I first began our urban forestry work downtown, we had some big green dreams of what Main Street could look like in the city of St. Catharines, and if there was political will between the city and its partners to invest in sustainable economic development and good green jobs locally. Before I get too far ahead of myself, I'd like to make you all a bit more familiar with our eclectic community. So what you're seeing in the photograph is 12 Mile Creek as it thunders past the southwest bend of the downtown core on its way to Lake Ontario. This area is bordered by a natural heritage zone that is a designated Niagara Natural Environmental Screening Layer and a regulated floodplain by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. We know that as development pressures grow, it is so imperative to protect this water and its surrounding lands. Downtown St. Catharines, in fact, is a designated urban growth center, and responsible development is necessary for accommodating this growing population. And we strongly believe that urban forest infrastructure provides important ecoservices for the community. So the map that you'll see on the screen represents the boundaries of downtown, which is where we collected our urban street tree data for our main study. Our Main Street, in fact, was originally an Indigenous trail that connected to 12 Mile Creek as an important waterway and food source. After European settlers arrived, the waterway became a canal system for trade. Another piece of our history is that downtown St. Catharines was the end terminus of the Underground Railroad and home to many abolitionists. Today, downtown St. Catharines is home to many different people from a variety of backgrounds, and we all continue to make downtown what it is, a place of prosperity, growth, and joy. Downtown St. Catharines historically was situated on the shoreline of glaciolacustrine deposits and is assumed to have remnants of Carolinian forests, meadows, tallgrass prairies, wetlands, and other freshwater habitats. I took these photos of fauna and flora from the Niagara Escarpment to the creek's outlet at Lake Ontario. So it's terribly important to first identify and understand the areas where we can improve beyond the surface level, delving into why and how of each issue, so that we can apply our scientific and cultural knowledge to find effective solutions within our communities. Oftentimes, green spaces get overlooked for their ecological importance. I'm going to quickly take us through a parcel of land that neighbors our downtown BIA to show you how it was managed and how we believe this site could function as a community-focused public space if it were restored properly. So storytelling plays an important role in developing relationships with community members. When I first saw these honey locusts along the 12 Mile Creek Trail, I could see this row of scruffy grandfathers all meeting with their morning coffee, discussing local politics. As native species and the most common tree downtown, honey locusts play their part in delivering ecoservices for the community. However, this row is under pressure from an invading stand of Tree of Heaven, a non-native invasive tree that was introduced in the 1800s by European settlers. I can imagine this is often a topic of conversation for the grandfather honey locusts. The site we are going to look at today is the proposed area for the downtown 12 Mile Creek Trailhead. You can see in this image from August 2012, the initial roadside canopy featured a high degree of biodiversity with both mature canopy and understory plants before construction commenced, offering a variety of habitats. In April 2014, the vegetation was cleared for the site to be used as a construction staging area throughout the development of a nearby bridge. By November 2014, the city planted a handful of trees, predominantly sugar maples, as an effort to remediate the land. From what you can see in this image, the nearby canopy is predominantly Tree of Heaven with one large mature silver maple specimen. The Tree of Heaven puts out suckers from a host tree and can effectively integrate and establish within nearby woody and shrubby areas. In one case at the remediation site featured on the far right image, the Tree of Heaven has surrounded a sugar maple and I expect will aim to outcompete this specimen to take over this sunny patch of grass. Downtown St. Catharines, though, along with other urban centers, are faced with very little green space and opportunities to reconnect with nature, which is why reimagining the site is so incredibly important. With worries surrounding invading species such as Tree of Heaven, biodiversity is incredibly important to the future of this natural space. Through my role downtown and in collaboration with Mike Kraft, a development horticultural technician for the city, we wrote a proposal to Tree Canada asking for a variety of shrubs, wild berry species, and 4 varieties of trees species to be installed by volunteer participants at the planting site. Those species are the ones listed in the chart here. Sadly, the proposal was unsuccessful. However, we will be connecting with community stakeholders to continue this important restoration work because the vision for us goes far beyond just the tree planting. Because despite our proposal not going through, we see so much potential for the trailhead to be revitalized and restored through the power of community. We would love to see a more collaborative effort to create an outdoor educational space for environmental programming, an outdoor art installation as part of a citywide outdoor museum initiative, waste management infrastructure, and a variety of outdoor seating. This site would be a place for the community to come together and celebrate our environmental commitments and relationship to the land through direct action and environmental stewardship. Taking this vision into consideration, the downtown is slated for significant growth. An example of this is the high-rise condominium approved to be developed directly across from the 12 Mile Creek Trailhead. It is critical that the city develop and employ best management practices for tree and other environmental protections throughout construction.
Thank you, Lindsay. So moving on from the history of downtown St. Catharines, I want to expand on one of the most common obstacles in urban forestry that has sort of hindered proper management of urban forests. And that is the prioritization of infrastructure such as sidewalks, roads, and utilities that is oftentimes not included natural features like trees. So thankfully, governments and urban forestry departments are working to redefine the value of trees and all green features within urban spaces as their own form of infrastructure, which we classify as green infrastructure. Historically, this green infrastructure has been viewed on paper mostly as a cost for many cities without much understanding or evaluation of the benefits that they provide us. So through this presentation, we will express how this investment into green infrastructure is not only valuable for the local economy, but it also contributes to vast assets that have the ability to appreciate in value over time when they are properly managed. So basically, we learned how to translate our love for trees that is deeply personal into a language that can more effectively influence realms that are governed by monetary or political value. So we hope to insert ourselves into that script. Actually, earlier today, Jennifer mentioned at the tree protection panel about the motivations for bylaw developments being primarily canopy coverage and climate change. So part of our streetscape and sustainability strategy for downtown St. Catharines is to move to a culture of natural asset management that can properly appraise the urban forest so that the value can be reflected in the municipal budget. So on the next slide, we see a big web of tree benefits, which I know others have talked about today. So we can see many positive impacts of green infrastructure that can rival the services provided by gray infrastructure in the city, while also improving psychological health, ecological health, physical comfort, and visual aesthetic or value. So when discussing trees, a lot of people might only recognize a few of the social or environmental benefits, such as shading or habitat provision, which are very important. But there are many underappreciated features that have been proven to increase as a result of a thriving urban canopy. So Philip earlier today mentioned noise reduction in his tree protection bylaws presentation. As well, many of the environmental and social benefits listed above can also provide economical benefits. For example, stormwater retention by trees, whereby rain is slowed by tree canopies and then captured by their root systems, doesn't only prevent polluted runoff from entering and damaging our rivers and lakes, but it also reduces pressure on the wastewater processing facilities by reducing the total volumes of inflow in combined sewer systems, which most older cities have. So this can save on costs for many of the chemicals used to disinfect and process domestic sewage. And having worked at a wastewater facility, usually in big rainfall events, a lot of that sewage is actually bypassed into the river. So definitely not an ideal outcome, and we can hopefully avoid that if we introduce more green spaces. So another example is shading and climate change, which are usually considered social and environmental improvements, but which also contribute to less demand on the electrical grid, which can relieve monetary stress for families and limit infrastructural pressure on municipalities. So there's a powerful interconnectedness among all these benefits that we can experience when we have more green infrastructure in our urban spaces. So there'll be a lot more arrows pointing around the diagram to properly reflect that interconnectedness. So next, I want to explore an example of how gray infrastructure is often prioritized above green infrastructure and why that is such an unfortunate but commonplace situation. So in the left photo taken in St. Catharines, we see a construction area for the installation of gray infrastructure of some kind. Now we don't know, Lindsay and I don't know the specifics of this project, so we're using this more as an example instead of a case study. But you can see that there is tape installed around to protect people from injuring themselves around the construction site. But there is nothing really to protect the tree from any harm during construction. Many municipalities follow the best management practices for trees during construction and will install a tree protection zone or TPZ with a defined boundary around the tree to protect the trunk and roots from incurring any damage. or limiting that damage if it is inescapable. However, this honey locust and others on the street had much of its vital root system cut and removed during the construction before the site was revitalized with cement. So tree root systems is where most damage occurs during construction, and it is permanent, and the critical root zones for these honey locusts were severely impacted. You can see, I think in the last presentation, it was mentioned they were doing tests with excavations a meter from the trunk, and you can see in the photo, if you look closely, it's a lot closer than a meter. So tree versus, another important point is that more than 50% of roots for most trees are found in the top 6 inches of the soil, which you can see have been entirely cleared out in this photo. So again, this is just an example, but with the evidence of root damage now buried, in a few years, when stress will likely present itself in these trees, there will be no understanding of what actually caused the tree's decline. This example could demonstrate a lack of preventative best management practices regarding tree protection during construction, whereby it is recommended to have an arborist involved throughout the entire construction process to monitor the tree's protection. But without an updated inventory to document this damage and track the impacts on these honey locusts, there will be no story to explain what caused the decline of the trees in this urban space, a space that already faces many other stressors. So instead, we will be left, if anything, with a simplified story that trees do not do well in urban spaces, which is true, but we could rephrase that to trees are declining due to these specific documented reasons, and here is how we can prevent that in the future to protect our valuable natural assets. On the other hand, in the center photo, Lindsay took a photo of a large tree protection zone in Guelph, where the soil under the canopy will not experience compaction during any construction, and the bark and limbs will be well protected from accidental damage. And the photo on the far right is Toronto, demonstrating what a construction site can look like in a more restricted urban space. Even if there is a tree protection zone, it's smaller than recommended. So here they have a clear, effective barrier installed with signage that communicates to the public about why protection is necessary and what it means, which I think is a really important component that was touched on as well, which is communicating with people so they feel involved in that protection process. So this is where we move into our case study and the importance of conducting tree inventories. The most extensive inventories that are collected are usually municipally owned trees. It's harder to inventory private trees, so this is the most common. As Philip mentioned this morning, many bylaws address private trees, and there's been a lot of discussion about trees damaged during development. But Lindsay and I have also seen a lot of potential for canopy growth and protection on public lands, such as street trees. Just gonna take a little step there. So this methodology and data that we will take you through can help show how we take applied science and turn it into community climate action. So our tree inventory began in March 2022 when Rachel Braithwaite, the executive director of the Downtown St. Catharines Association, or the St. Catharines Downtown Association, sorry, asked us a simple question, which was, how do we bring more trees downtown? Throughout the summer, 2 interns, Poonam Gautam and Lena Garcia, pictured in the slide, were brought on board to assist with field surveying and data collection. Throughout our literature review, sustainability evaluation, and data analysis, we were able to conclude that mature trees with large spreading canopies are the greatest assets to our urban ecosystems. We were later able to corroborate this conclusion with an existing body of research. A healthy urban forest that achieves its greatest potential is one that is able to mature. But growing these natural assets takes a significant investment of time and money, largely due to installation and maintenance costs. Our research question needed to change. We started to ask, how can we ensure that the urban street trees reach maturity? So first we'll explore our inventorying method. So to assess the urban forest in BIA, our team performed a complete survey of all street-facing trees downtown, which we refer to as urban street trees or USTs. For each tree, we took a georeference coordinate, identified the species, measured the diameter at breast height or DBH, and performed a health assessment. The health assessment was merely a visual assessment, which is known as a level 1 assessment, using predetermined signs of decay, damage, or disease that may indicate that the tree is in decline and might require removal in upcoming years. This is helpful because a forestry department can then track declining trees and either address the stressors to help the tree recover or remove the tree before it becomes a hazard to nearby people or infrastructure. So all this data was compiled into an Excel CSV file. In this form, the data can then be easily uploaded into QGIS and iTree for further analysis. And both of these softwares are free and accessible tools that can help us model our data. So iTree provides us with scientific and quantifiable data about the services provided for by the trees, parameters such as carbon storage in metric tons per year. While QGIS is used to provide an interactive map, which will be demonstrated on the next slide.
So some cities like Waterloo and Kitchener perform an annual inventory process to help effectively manage their urban forests. St. Catharines performed an urban street tree inventory in 2016, which we were able to access through Niagara open source data for our baseline results. We were then able to compare our 2022 results to the existing dataset as pictured here. Many municipalities, however, do not have this data. Size class intervals are often used in forest ecology to begin describing the age and health of a forest. For the purposes of our study, we recorded all trees regardless of their diameter and classed trees as saplings, young trees, adult mature trees, and large mature trees. Adult mature trees and large mature trees we found are the most valuable urban street trees as indicated by the parameters from the iTree assessment. From 2016 to 2022, we gained 19 adult mature trees. However, we lost 3 large mature trees. And as we go through our baseline findings, you will get to see the impact this has had on our urban forests. With the loss of large mature trees, the max DBH dropped from 89 to 72.4 centimeters. And likewise, the standard deviation and population variance also decreased. The ecoservice most impacted by the loss of mature trees was carbon storage, which went down 6.23 metric tons between 2016 to 2022. We found, however, that oxygen production and pollution removal remained stable. With improved retention of mature trees and improved maintenance of young trees, we are so confident these values can grow over time. We recently went out to identify trees for heritage status consideration and discovered that one of our 6 large mature trees had been removed. You can see the difference in the photos here that our team identified as a native basswood is no longer present in 2023. You can see the dramatic change to the surrounding urban landscape, which means cooling, shading, carbon storage, and much of our descriptive statistics will be altered when and if another inventory is conducted. So we decided to run a benchmarking analysis with Guelph, which has a very similar BIA to St. Catharines, as you can see in the photo. Guelph has a near identical population density for their BIA, which was useful for drawing comparisons between our data sets. We used Guelph's open source data for their tree inventory to perform the benchmarking exercise. While we are not aware of Guelph's methodology and inventory scope, with similar inventorying parameters, it was easy to compare the data sets and perform an analysis on both populations. So right off the bat, you can see the differences between our data sets. Their range is much larger with trees up to 180 centimeters in DPH. This larger range is driving the population variability and standard deviation, which is much higher than ours. One statistic we left out from our comments earlier is the mode, a measurement of which number appears the most often in your data set. And it's really clear to see that the majority of trees in downtown St. Catharines compared to Guelph reflect a smaller, younger urban forest. Funny enough, though, through our benchmarking process, we found the most common tree in both BIAs is the honey locust.
This image here shows what a living tree inventory can look like. So one that is updated uh, basically every day. This is taken from Kitchener's online resource. The City of London also has a tree inventory available online. With a living inventory, the database is updated with tree removals, tree plantings, health assessments, and any new information that can help monitor and manage the forest. So a quick example, I clicked on a northern hackberry and their tree inventory lets me know who owns it, what its ID number is, its DBH, and other information. So a tool like this can be invaluable for an urban forest, which we will touch on more in our recommendation section. So now that we know a mature, healthy forest provides high value and that a strong inventory method is the best way to measure and manage your forest, we can now use our species identification data to help choose which trees we want to select to create the most ideal diverse population. Sadly, we cannot just select any tree for any site. We have to select an appropriate tree for a particular location, one that will be best suited for the environmental conditions of the site. So we filter our options through site selection, finding locations to plant, and then species selection, choosing the right species for the site. Urban environments pose unique obstacles and limitations, such as sealed and compacted soils, high salt from de-icing, limited water infiltration, and physical barriers such as utilities, buildings, and walkways. So choosing the optimal tree for a space can be very challenging. Beyond the site conditions, there are many ecological and biological considerations, which three of which we'll explore. So I'm going to start with the calorie pair on the left. The dreaded calorie pear. So the calorie pear is a beautiful flowering tree in the spring, which makes it very common and favored for urban sites. However, calorie pears are also non-native, ones which are classified as small stature trees. When we discuss the value of a mature tree, this value as green infrastructure is intrinsically tied to the size. So a larger tree provides more value. As seen in the chart on the left, the calorie pair is on the lower end for tree height and canopy spread. This limits the potential for canopy cover, carbon storage, cooling transpiration, and much more. This limited stature directly translates to a lower monetary return of investment, as seen in the cost-benefit analysis created by Geiger et al. On the right. Their research shows how large trees deliver an average annual net benefit 2 to 6 times greater than mature small stature trees. This means a small stature tree like the calorie pear offers a smaller payoff and limits potential value of the urban canopy. While a few calorie pears have been accepted for their hardiness in urban spaces, their ability to occupy smaller spaces and their contributions to species richness, they comprise 16% of the St. Catharines downtown inventory, many of which were planted in areas with no utility limitations. So why plant a calorie pear where a bur oak can be, just looking at the chart as an example. So the widely accepted industry standard, which I think was just mentioned, was defined by Santamore and his colleagues in the 90s, which suggests there should be no more than 10% of any one species in an urban population. Nowadays, even the 10% limit is commonly considered to be very, very generous. So we actually want to have it a lot, try to keep it far below that if possible. So that will lead us to our next specimen, which is the honey locust, the favorite urban tree. So honey locust pictured in the center is one of the most commonly planted urban species, favored for its high tolerance to urban stressors. While honey locusts are much larger than calorie pears and they are native to the area, offering us much of the infrastructural values that we want in urban trees, within St. Catharines downtown, honey locusts comprised a whopping 43% of our downtown street tree population, which more than quadruples the 10% recommended limit. So this graph here is a quick visual representation of the St. Catharines downtown street population, which you can see is dominated by calorie pears and honey locusts. If the honey locust population were to become susceptible to ailments, as we are seeing with ash, beech, hemlock, and now oaks, the St. Catharines BIA could lose over 2/5 of their USD population, and by extension, a proportional financial and infrastructural loss. So a dependency on honey locusts, urban resilience can actually end up reducing the overall resilience of the urban forest from challenges that are only being magnified by climate change. So it invites us to ask a few questions. Are both of these species optimal investments as green infrastructure? And if we want urban forestry to prioritize maintenance and long-term valuation, does it make sense to put so much dependency on two species? We would argue no. So for our third consideration, though, we have the Siberian elm, which is pictured on the right. This tree is also a non-native tree species in Ontario and is considered invasive in some areas. While many municipalities consider the Siberian elm to be a nuisance tree or a permissible loss, this perspective ignores the unique urban stressors faced by urban street trees and dismisses the valuation of urban forests as natural assets. But this begs the question, what is more valuable? The infrastructural value of an invasive tree or the ecological security of only planting native species? So looking at these photos here, in 2022, a mature Siberian elm was removed during the repaving of a parking lot downtown. As mentioned, St. Catharines downtown inventories went from 9 large mature trees in 2016 to only 6 in 2022, not including the large basswood we just lost. So relatively, this is a huge loss from an already young street tree population. We would argue that the stature and maturity of this Siberian elm, which offers important cooling, shading, and diversity, could, in this instance, override its nuisance status. And I really want to emphasize the could aspect because this seems to be a point of discussion across municipalities. If we are to remove all non-native species, we would lose a massive percentage of our urban forests. And depending on how strict we are with native status for trees, we could lose even more. Black locust, Manitoba maples, eastern redbuds, many of which people mistakenly assume are native to the area. So the conversation requires a lot of nuance. And to have a nuanced conversation, we would argue that dedicated inventorying is necessary to start making some of those challenging decisions. If we don't want any non-native species, we may have to invest more in the installation side of things, such as soil remediation, soil cell systems, alternatives to salting, as well as the more in-depth site and species selection process. Beyond this, trees need to be monitored, maintained, protected, either physically or through bylaws. As we discussed in our case study, we want to look at quality over quantity and not just the number of trees, but the quality of health for those trees, which makes invasives a strong consideration as we phase out. So on this graph, I mentioned I wanted to look at what would happen if we removed all invasives in downtown St. Catharines. Of the street trees planted by the city, 37% were identified as non-native species according to our field assessment, not including the unidentified ones. These included ginkgos, Callery pears, Norway maples, little leaf lindens, and Tatar maples. Norway maples, for example, still beloved by many, have been proven to show highly invasive qualities, completely outcompeting native species in some of our natural environments. But removing 37% of the already limited canopy would have massive negative impacts for the city, the people who live there or the people who visit downtown for shopping and recreation. It would affect businesses, greatly reducing the aesthetic value of the area and contribute massively to the heat island effect. So a possible solution could be phasing out non-natives and invasives over time, strategically, while prioritizing native species for all new plantings. This could help invest in the future of the city and also prevent invasive damage in neighboring ecosystems. So I'm just going to quickly steal this slide from Lindsay from earlier to show how damaging an invasive species can be when it's allowed to establish. Many trees escape urban or suburban landscapes and wreak havoc in natural spaces. The existing strategy is limited to installing a few trees on the site, but there is no invasive species management within the city or management plan. We recommend to the city of St. Catharines to increase its investment in restoration as part of a larger urban forest management strategy, because if an ecosystem cannot achieve recovery, then it hasn't really been remediated. Beyond this, there is an added layer of complexity when we consider things like assisted migration, where we intently introduce more southern species that aren't native to the area in preparation for potential warming effects, or to replace species that are unable to recover due to disease and pests. So we're not going to get into that today because that's an ongoing conversation for us as well. But the takeaway is that we need to start making more insightful, complex decisions about our forests. And to do that, we need to start with persistent and consistent inventorying to help make those judgments. There are many other greening topics to explore that could improve our urban ecology, such as more extensive soil systems or integrating understory plants and shrub lines. But today we're just focusing on trees.
So based on all of our assessments and meetings with some very dedicated stakeholders, we developed a series of recommendations for a variety of audiences to improve management of our natural infrastructure. So as we've been mentioning, all of our work has been driven by community action and volunteering in downtown St. Catharines. And it's this drive that's allowed us to make significant strides and changes that we'll explore in the next few slides. So out of our research, we honed in on 6 recommendations for the city of St. Catharines to increase its canopy. At a high level, we identified the importance of fostering a culture of sustainability, asset management integration, and proactive management strategies, which all contribute to the overall health of an urban forest. Our report also demonstrates how vital urban forest inventorying is for urban forestry management. Our call to the province is to standardize a consistent and persistent tree inventorying methodology across Ontario. We fully support the provincial government's amendment within OREG 588-17 to include natural assets within municipal natural asset planning. We encourage municipalities across the province to reclassify street trees and other green infrastructure as capital assets in alignment with the 2024 Asset Management Policy Review. We strongly believe these 2 objectives will allow us to optimize urban forestry management using municipally allocated funding and data-driven decision-making. But the reality is that large, mature tree stock is in decline around the world within urban ecosystems. These trees are being replaced with younger monocultures that provide less social, economic, and ecological value for communities and resilience against climate change. As a community of practice based in applied science, we need to bridge the gap between people and the environment to educate and advocate for investments in sustainable green infrastructure around the world. Highlighting a few of our upcoming initiatives. So advocacy and public outreach are paramount to bringing everyone together for a sustainable future. Sean and I have presented at a series of international conferences, one in Toronto for the International Association for Great Lakes Research, and most recently in Darwin, Australia for the Society for Ecological Restoration. We have also used this work to connect with aspiring professionals in the environmental sector and showcase the types of good green jobs that are opening in municipalities and organizations across the province and the world who deeply care about climate action and the role we play in environmental stewardship.
So I'm just going to quickly go through this because I see our time is a little limited. So basically, we delegated to St. Catharines. They were going to outsource their arborist department. And using our report as a lot of support for our arguments, we successfully, using the help of arborists and local community members, business owners, union workers, convinced the city to keep their arborist staff in-house. Not only that, but by using our benchmarking exercise with cities like Guelph, we were able to convince the city to push to expand their department beyond what they already had. So using our research, we were able to connect with community members and mobilize together to change the city's decision.
And then just to close out today, we'll just talk about some opportunities that are happening downtown. So May 25th, we're hosting a Go Green event where we're celebrating our commitment to environmental stewardship. We are going to be going to all of our large mature trees, our select large mature trees and adult mature trees downtown, and giving them all a price tag, which you can see on the slide here. Through my department, we also do a lot of other initiatives. One of our core ones is the Modular Tree Project, which will highlight possible areas for depaving and possible greening to areas lacking green coverage. One area in particular is the east end of St. Paul Street, which you can see on this map has three urban street trees on the east side, but none on the west, and is completely lacking any sort of green coverage there. We also host our inventory online, and we'll be using this to facilitate our Adopt a Tree program, which is coming very soon.
So thank you all for coming today to listen to our presentation on the importance of how applied science can help shape urban forestry management through tools such as tree inventories that can help further insight community climate action. We believe that municipalities should take accountability for their urban forests, which starts with precise and accurate data collection and management, and relationships can be fostered with citizens who share these resources and are invited to participate, learn, and contribute to the advancements in connecting the people to the land. So thank you so much, and please let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks so much for sharing. I think it's really exciting to see, over the years, the work that you've, put together in the BIA, and especially some of those images of like before and after were really, really powerful to kind of, further that point. So I've posted in the chat to see if anybody has any specific questions for you. Before those come through, I wanted to ask a little bit about heritage trees and what you think the benefits are of implementing a system like this. It's not something that, as far as I know, that we have in my small-ish hometown south of London. So yeah, I'm wondering like what an implementation process might look like for that, and what are the benefits of heritage tree programs?
So I think I'll start this conversation maybe, and then Sean, you can pick it up, because we just had a very unique opportunity here. Our city council had voted to move forward with a district heritage study, which focused on our downtown area, specifically our BIA. So we just found the motivation within to reach out to their study team and ask if they would be willing to receive heritage considerations from us. So that's kind of our unique, I guess, advantage to implementing a heritage system. And in terms of pairing that with the inventory, perhaps Sean, you might have a little bit more to say on that side.
For sure. Well, to start, it was really easy for us to identify larger trees that we could submit for heritage consideration because we had them already mapped and recorded. So that was one of the great benefits. It's extremely accessible to search through and be like, oh, these are our largest trees, and that's a good place to start. And it's also just identifying trees as heritage trees, I think, is a great way to recognize that history that we talked about in the space, especially in some of our older downtown areas, and sort of connect people with that story as well as the cultural and heritage that we don't often connect to in urban spaces. So I think it's a great way to start bridging that communication with the public.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that also connects to what you were saying, Lindsay, about, hearing the stories from the trees, but also being able to tell stories about what those trees may have lived through or seen. And I think, we have a over 300-year-old oak on the property here that is a major draw for people. We know some things about it, that it was like a pretty significant landmark as well, and in the Underground Railroad and whatnot. But like that's a major thing that people connect with, and something that, even people who might not be interested in trees and forestry are still gonna have interest in, despite maybe a lack of interest or whatnot. So I definitely, I see the value in that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if we have any questions in the chat. A lot of, congratulatory comments. It's fabulous to see a BIA demonstrate leadership in urban forestry. Stellar work. and a prompt that you should present to urban planners and landscape architects, which is
That's,
something I've,
oh,
sorry,
sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I want to give credit to Lindsay and Rachel, our executive director, because they've really led so much of this sustainability work downtown that I think maybe isn't seen as commonly for BIAs. So they've really led this project and turned it into something that I think will motivate a lot of other cities to do the same.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. Um, sorry, a comment just sorry, a question popped up here. How about some comment about the small trees I saw in the raised concrete planters near the end of your presentation? People love them, hate them, or indifferent. So I guess, sorry,
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of rephrase that question. I don't know if that was clear.
I think talking about the modular trees that, well, what we're calling modular trees, the trees and planters. So just to kind of give some context to that, the vision for the modular tree initiative was really to provide greening in areas that can't receive greening because of nearby infrastructure limitations, or to use them as a placemaking project where we identify areas for depaving and then build a community of practice around that tree as a symbol. I would be very curious of how modular trees could act as green infrastructure. Don't necessarily have that particular answer there. But as an advocacy tool, we see a lot of particular value in them. I think the only time we get any sort of negative impacts is our feedback on them is when it impacts mobility. So I think that that definitely needs to be considered in site selection for sure.
And just
Yeah, that
to
makes
add, when I was in Guelph, they really smartly put these modular trees in areas that would otherwise either require a lot of construction to introduce tree infrastructure, or they're just spaces that would otherwise not really be impeded by these new installations. So in downtown Guelph, it was like a parking lot right beside a bunch of businesses downtown. And the way they had put them in, it was just a way to add not only aesthetic value of the trees, but a lot of shading by this walkway where people are parking and people are walking. It's a very busy area, and it's completely cemented around it. So it's just sort of a great sort of fill-in solution that
Mm.
provides something that would otherwise be completely barren if we said, okay, it's too expensive to depave this area. We don't have the money. I guess we'll just leave it, and then it's hot and drab and all those other things. But with the modular planters, suddenly you're introducing so much greenery to the space. So
Mhm.
I think there's a
yeah, I
comment.
imagine. Oh,
Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
People can't attach their bicycles to them.
Mm.
Oh,
Is
with
that,
the
I think,
planter. Yeah, I see. Yeah, instead of people tying them to trees, I think. Is that what you mean?
yeah, that's what I got that from that as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I kind of, I'm of the same perspective that having something is better than nothing. And I mean, certainly we're talking about removing, in terms of removing invasive species, like looking at nearly half of your, urban or BIA street trees. So, like again, where you're weighing that balance, like, is it better to have something than nothing? And yeah, I think that's a really pertinent and important question. In
Mhm.
that same vein, while you were going through your percentages, I was wondering what, in an ideal situation, what sorts of trees would you be putting in the downtown area? Um, I know you spoke a little bit about removal, not remove, that sort of thing, but in an ideal world, what species would be in that space?
That is a great question. That's something I actually really want to explore more as I navigate my career in urban forestry. I do know that a lot of species have difficulties in urban spaces, as we talk about a lot. But I've also heard people say, like, I think I'm trying to think of which tree it was. Wasn't a tulip, sassafras tree. I think a lot of people say you can't grow sassafras in urban spaces, but then I'll meet someone who did plant them and they survived and did very well. And same with sugar maples; those can be difficult in a lot of spaces as well. But I think that's where we have to sort of invest more trust and, put more investment into the installation process as well. So instead of just giving up on native species that might struggle a bit more or face more difficulties, look at why that is happening and see if we can accommodate them better. Or maybe there are trees that are doing very, very well of that species, and we can start looking at those sites and saying, what about this site is allowing it to thrive? So for me, it's just about a diverse complement of native species, as opposed to sort of, we see a lot of the copy paste sort of effect where suddenly a whole row of ginkgos is put in. And while they were native 7 million years ago, they don't really offer any or much ecological benefit since they've been reintroduced in the 1800s. So stuff like that, where it'd just be nice to see more native trees. And we talked a lot about large stature trees being the most valuable, but really we want to see, again, a diverse complement of small stature, shrubs, plants, as much as we can. And I think this was answered in the last thing as well. So basically, as much diversity as possible that is native would be ideal, but we'll see how climate change affects that as well, as we go forward. So.
But I think really essential to that is a collaborative research effort that is led by the city in collaboration with community partners and integrating citizen science into some of that testing. We have a research consortium locally that is more focused at higher level research. And I think one of the benefits of a BIA is that direct connection to community and the businesses and commercial property owners and to local government, which I would encourage everyone here that's listening to obviously get involved with, and also and ask for that applied science within your community and to be involved in some of that planning and research and development.
Well, and just a comment, Meg left a comment in the chat about how avoiding wasting resources is a big part of the conversation. And that's where Lindsay and I really push inventorying, because you can start to track, just through your inventory, what species are declining or which ones are doing very well. And using that data analysis, you can start making those decisions. Are all of your sugar maples starting to decline? Is that going to be a large loss to your inventory? What can we do? And you can use your iTree analysis and data to pitch to the city and say, like, this is how much value of infrastructure you're going to lose. We think this is worth investing in to prevent these trees from disappearing, among many other reasons. So it is very complicated, but hopefully we're moving in that direction. So
Yeah, definitely.
there's some more.
So you've shared your contact. Yeah, no, and I think that's something that we at Reforest, as like I wouldn't say grassroots, like our team is building, but we're certainly at a space where we're trying to, really work on community engagement, community involvement. And sometimes that doesn't mean, it's like sometimes if you get someone to plant a tree, but you have to go back and like maybe straighten it out, replant it, dig it back up. Like there's still that experience of like, maybe it's not perfect the first time, but if you can get someone like to get their hands in the dirt and to like experience, kind of step into that world, I think that, in even for me in education, like you see someone who's maybe not doing something like exactly the way it needs to go or the way that is best, but being able to teach that over time and to, get people to step into spaces where they're like, oh, like I'm, it's exciting to see the price tags. Like I think that'll be a really interesting, community engagement aspect where you can people who don't know certain things about certain trees can certainly lean into that and really benefit from it. So I think it's really important work, and we appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you
Uh,
everyone today.
well, and just
Yeah.
touching. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, please go for it.
All right. Well, just last comment about what you were saying is that everyone who interacted with us while we did our inventory was excited about it. And like the price tags, if we can get the community involved, get them volunteering, planting, like you said, even if there's mistakes made, it doesn't matter about that so much as long as people are feeling involved and we're getting people engaged in forestry. So
Mhm. Still, yeah, with consideration too. I maybe said that like, oh, we're just planting trees. We're sending the, like resources are just, like 5,000 trees that were planted terribly by children. Like that's not what I meant. But no, I certainly, I, I certainly am on the same page and agree that, getting people out is better. So yeah. Thank you both for being here today and for closing out our first conference day. It was really amazing to see your presentation and again to see the work that you're doing in St. Catharines BIA. So I think that is our time for today, and we'll close out on that. I just have a couple last minute. I gotta show the CEU code for this session and close out some things, but yeah, again, we really appreciate it, and thank you for sharing your contact, Lindsay, and hopefully we can make some connections and whatnot through that. So
Nice.
enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you.